Good morning. Good morning, Miami, and good morning, world. And welcome to the Liz Live Show. I'm Liz Statlander, and you are watching Liz Live on YouTube. And please, if you haven't already and you're watching live or later on, please click the subscribe button so you get notified of all my live shows and all of the content that I put here on the channel. So, what a beautiful Wednesday. Happy Wednesday morning to everybody out there. And thank you so much for watching us today. Today's a very serious subject, a subject that I am all too familiar with, quite unfortunately, and that is the subject of a parent. I wanted today to really specifically focus on adults losing parents, which is very different than children losing parents. So um, I have had much experience working with childhood bereavement. I experienced childhood bereavement as myself. My father passed away when I was 11, and I had the pleasure of then working with the Children's Bereavement Center of Miami. And I'm just gonna move this camera over just a little bit. Oopsies. Let's see how that goes. Okay. Nope. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So I did have the pleasure of working with grieving children and children bereavement for many years. And I have always made grief a part of my practice, but we don't always talk about adult loss of a parent because we tend to think of childhood bereavement, so a child losing a parent, as so tragic and so sad, and it is. Don't get me wrong, it is. But it's also very, very tragic and sad for adults, just like it is for children. And I'm noticing, I think I'm at the age of 45 where I am noticing that a lot of my friends are losing their parents. And my friends are between my age and probably 55 and 60. And definitely that's the age where parents start to age, they start to go downhill. You have to watch the aging process, and the inevitable is coming. Death is something that nobody can escape. And I don't know that we look at or give enough, attention to, as we don't give the attention that we should give to adult loss of a parent. We think of adults as, having the coping skills and of having children and having the support system and the tools to be able to handle loss of a parent. And I would say that by and large, there's some truth to that. But I have been seeing a lot of adults losing parents in my practice this year. Is it a coincidence that it was the same year as COVID? I really don't know. COVID really did take the life of one or two of my friends' parents, but for the most part, it was just, other natural causes or other things that are happening. And there's a lot of specific things that come with adult bereavement of a parent. So, adult loss of a parent that may not necessarily come with childhood bereavement. And we understand grief, loss, bereavement in different developmental stages. So we don't when in my field, when we're looking at loss, we tend to look at it by developmental stage. So we look at, maybe a 3 to a 3-year-old all the way up to maybe like a 7 or 8-year-old, which even within those ages, there's differences. And then we look at the young adolescents, middle school, high school, young adult, and adult. And of course, each developmental stage in each group comes with a different set of issues, right? And different set of things that happen when they lose a parent. So today, as we focus on adult loss, what I mean by adult loss is I'm talking more from, let's say, the ages of 30 and up, right? And sometimes you still have people in their 60s who have, parents alive. So although it seems like a broad age range, 30 to 60 something or 30 plus, I'm talking about adults who maybe have their own lives, their own careers, their own children. They're independent, but they lose a parent. So let's talk about what some of those issues are. And if you are watching this and you have a friend or a family member who lost a parent this year, which I bet you do, please share this video because it's really important because you're going to hear things today on this show that you won't hear anywhere else. And we need to get the message out. Okay. So, first thing I think that adults deal with loss of a parent, if they have the chance to see them, getting old, getting ill, and they know it's coming. I think that what um, we think about is reflection. We reflect, I think, first thing on our relationship with that parent. So we start going back to our childhood and we start thinking, you know, was I a good kid? Did I put my parents through what did I put my parents through? I know when my mother was first diagnosed with lung cancer, oh, so many years ago, I was 30. I think I was 30. Maybe I was 20. I don't remember exactly. And I cried for days and days and days when I first found out she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, although she wound up surviving 7 years past that moment. But the first thing I thought about is how guilty I felt for all the crap I put her through as a teenager. I mean, it was immediate. And I've talked to a lot of other people and they have felt the same way. So immediately I'm thinking, "Oh my god, I can't believe like she actually may die." And I think that that was the first time that I ever realized that my mother was not superwoman and invincible. And I think that no matter how old we are, there is this sort of fantasy that we all have, a human fantasy that our parents will live forever, and they don't. And we know that intellectually, but until they actually get terminally ill or we really see the aging process taking over, we don't really think about it. We don't really, it's just not something that we think about. So we just think about, oh, they're never going to die or they'll be around forever. Or, oh, when they die, it's so far into the future, I don't need to worry about it. But it can happen at any time. And I've been watching a lot of friends and family go through it. And I think the first issue that comes up for us adults when our parent is terminally ill or is dying or has died is we reflect on the relationship right away and we think about how we have treated them and we think about what they have done for us, what have our parents done for us. And I started thinking about, all the wonderful things that my mother did for me that I probably took for granted. And I can actually honestly say, I think it wasn't until after she died that I really understood her legacy and I really understood what it was that all the things that she taught me. And I don't know why it came in that order. And I don't know if it'll come in that order for everybody else, but I can say that for me, that was definitely something interesting that I wasn't expecting. So we are faced with this reflective period. How was I as a son? How was I as a daughter? Have I done enough? Did I not do enough? And a lot of people come into my office feeling very guilty. I should have spent more time with them. I shouldn't have, let them sit at the party in the corner, not talk to anyone. Cause that's, what older people, older adults, the elderly, they tend to isolate themselves and they're very quiet. And so we forget they're there, right? We don't even remember that they're there if they're, older. And if your parents upon death were not as old as I'm talking about, like 80 plus, and maybe they are a little more vibrant. But a lot of times the elderly get forgotten about, in a room. I've seen it happen. And I think we start reflecting on that. Was I so busy with my kids or my career or my husband or my wife or my life that I just, I didn't think about mom. I didn't think about mom the way I should have. I didn't think about dad. And we start reflecting from there. And if I can, say anything to you out there, I don't have proof of what I'm saying, but I really believe in my heart that when our parents transition from this life to what I believe is another one, when they make that move and they die, I don't think that that's what they're thinking about. I don't think that they are looking at you and keeping score and counting the dinners and the lunches and the time that you spent or didn't spend with them. And I don't think they much care. I think they're thinking about their own life and they're thinking about you as the child and wanting to know that you are happy and sufficient and loved before they leave you. And again, I can't prove it, but I've heard it from a lot of aging parents and a lot of terminally ill people that is the concern. They're not keeping score. But we, the kids, the adult children, are thinking, that they're judging us because we're judging us and we're reflecting on how much time we did or didn't spend with them. So I think that's a first piece that I want to acknowledge and sort of identify that is going to happen or is happening for you or will happen. And that's something that I've worked, through quite a bit with many, many clients over the years and also myself. And if you have the opportunity, many of us don't, but if you have the opportunity to um, speak to your parents as they are dying or as they are aging, I think that the more important thing to say, rather than "I'm sorry I wasn't the best daughter," or "I'm sorry I wasn't the best son," or "I'm sorry I didn't do more with you," or da da da, is to do now whatever you can. It's never too late to say "I love you" or to tell them how you feel. But I think to reassure them more that you're going to be okay without them. I think that's more what they're interested in knowing and hearing. They're not so much interested on what you've done for them lately. Not if they're a relatively decent human being. That's not what I don't think any of us. I don't know because thank God I haven't been there yet. But if I were dying, I don't think that's what I would be thinking about. I think I would be thinking about, okay, are the people who love me and depend on me, are they going to be okay if I'm not around? So keep that in mind if you're struggling with the loss of a parent or you have a parent who's dying. We our minds tend to wander under intense emotion and we think of all these crazy things that I don't believe are true. And let's keep it real and think about it's not about you, it's about them. But yet, as an adult child of parental loss, I know what you're going through because I've been there and I've thought it all. And I have the unique position to not only have been through it myself, but also to counsel so many people through this process over the years of my career. And I can tell you, sort of from both positions, what happens and what goes on. And I've been in the company of people who are dying and have children, and I've been able to talk to them about what it is they want. So if you're feeling that guilt or wondering, have I done enough? Did I do enough? Don't worry about it because that's not what they're thinking. Your parents are thinking something else. And if you're a parent, this would be a good time to think about if you were dying and you were in that position, you were saying goodbye to the life on this planet or this area, wherever the heck we are. If you are saying goodbye, you're not going to be thinking, gee, I wonder how many dinners my daughter took me to, or how many times my son drove me crazy. You're going to be thinking about, wow, are they going to be okay without me? And how can we make this final time or these final moments meaningful? And I really believe that that is the goal there. And I know a lot of you are struggling. I know that, but please hear what I say. And you can, as I say, you can take it to the bank, as my mother would say, or you can put it in your pipe and smoke it because I'm guaranteeing you that that's correct. So after you kind of wrap your head around all that, and you do that reflection of an evaluation of what kind of child have I been to my parents, or was I to my parents, or am I, depending if the death is imminent, if it's already happened, if it just happened. And I think the next thing we're going to be thinking about is our own mortality. It's because if we're lucky enough to be adults that still have our parents, um, which is not the case for many, if lucky enough to still have that parent, then I think we can start sort of thinking about that next piece. Well, wow, they are not Superman or Superwoman. They actually are mortal, and they are uh, fragile living beings, and not the way that we always looked at our parents as children, which is sometimes on a pedestal. We tend to, sort of see the father as the archetype of, the great patriarch, and mom is the great matriarch, mom was so loving and she was so wonderful and da da da. And that's great, but then when you see that they're dying, it really smacks you right in the face, and you go, wow, they're not Superman and they're not Superwoman and they're not immortal, and they are on the brink of death, or they did die. And what does that mean for me as a surviving child? What does that mean? And it tends to really shake your world and wake you up in a way that it wouldn't necessarily impact a child. It wakes a child up and shakes a child up, but the effects of losing a parent as a child are so traumatic that I can't even put it into proper words, having been through it myself. But for adults, it's also traumatic, but it's different because you have your own lives established, and you have your own children, or you have your own lives, or your husbands, or your wives, or whatever. Um, so it's this piece that they're not on a pedestal anymore, that they're real, and that they're facing death, or they died. And what does that mean for me? That means that I too can die. That means that I am not immortal, and that my mortality is very real. And now that I see it, and I'm looking at it, and I've lived it, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me? Does that mean that I need to change, or I need to do things differently? And then I think another reflection begins. Okay. So we did the first reflection, evaluating, how was I as a child? How do I rate, are my parents, did I do a good job for them? Did I make them proud? And did I spend enough time with them, et cetera, et cetera? And then we start thinking about our own fragility and our own mortality, and how life can be um, so precious and so fleeting. And we realize, well, if our parents were in their 80s or 90s or 70s or whatever it is, then we're probably middle-aged, and that means that the years we have left on earth are shrinking, and they're getting smaller and smaller. And so sometimes it really wakes you up, good smack in the face. You go, oh my gosh, half my life's almost over, more than half my life is over. And have I done what I wanted to do? Have I made the accomplishments that I wanted to? Have I made my parents proud? And, you know, where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? And it's interesting, over the course of the weekend, my best friend here in Miami, her father died on Sunday. And I talked a little bit about him on Wednesday, and I've been going of the funeral, the burial, and in the Jewish religion, we do something called Shiva. And I was thinking of all these things this weekend. I was thinking about the um, the different processes that we all have in our different cultures when it comes to death, and it comes to, you know, how we say goodbye to people in a formal sense, in a ceremonial sense. And each culture and each religion does things differently. But what I really love about the Jewish culture is a couple of things. One, we bury people very quickly, and largely we don't embalm the body, and within a day or two, you bury your loved one. And um and the reason I like that is because it's not a lingering issue, because it's very traumatic for people to think of their loved one, um you know being buried or cremated or whatever it is that people choose to do. It's very uncomfortable to talk about and think about and witness. So in the Jewish religion, there's no lingering. It's like a one, two, three, and we face it and we look at it and we do it. And then we spend the next, week or 4 or 5 days, depending, every family does it differently, at the house of the mourners. And in the Jewish religion, the mourners are considered the immediate family, the children of the person who died, the brothers and sisters, the grandchildren, um, and those are considered the actual mourners. And the mourners wear a black ribbon on their clothes, I think for 30 days. And the rabbi says a prayer and tears the ribbon. And you put this little black ribbon on your clothing so that everyone in your community, when they see you, they know that you're in mourning. They know that you just lost someone. And the idea is that the community is supposed to come to you and come to your aid and do everything for you. They're supposed to bring you food and clean your house and, gather around you. And the idea is that the love and the kindness of your family and your community is there to lift you up and to support you during a time where you're suffering. And I really think it's a beautiful gesture and a beautiful idea. And, we'll all complain like, oh, okay, we have 3 nights of Shiva, or we have 5 nights of Shiva, and, people come in and out of your house all the time. But as an adult, I think it's a beautiful time because it's a time where you stop life, which I think the death of someone you love is worthy of. You stop your life for a moment and you just spend time with people who love and care about you and just want to be there and express, you know, their love and their caring about you. It's a beautiful thing. And I don't think as a young girl I understood that. I remember when my father died, we did 7 days of Shiva, which is like the max I think that you do. We were a lot more religious when I was growing up, and my mother covered all the mirrors in the house because you're not supposed to focus on vanity, and you're only supposed to focus on the loss and dealing with this person and honoring this person who passed away. And we weren't supposed to watch TV, and we didn't go to school for 7 days, and it was a very scary time. But I remember the family that was around me every day, my cousins and my brothers, my aunts and uncles and my grandparents, just being there, and family friends, makes you feel safe. And as a little child, it did for me anyway. And I think even as an adult child, that these are nice things. Now, if you're not Jewish, and I know it doesn't matter. I mean, there's many different beautiful customs and ways that other cultures um, get together with family and celebrate. And the Jewish religion tends to be a little more solemn and focused on the mourning process, where there's other cultures that are very celebratory of life. And it's all good. I mean, it's all good. None of it's bad. It's just whatever you prefer or whatever you're used to. But I think that those processes are important. And I know that there are some studies I've read that show that mourners, okay, the immediate family members of someone who died, have a more successful grieving process when surrounded by family. And family, as we've talked about on the show, doesn't have to mean a blood relation. It just means, in my view, being surrounded by people who love you and people who care about you. And you can bet if people show up when someone has died in your life that you're close to, you can bet that they care about you for sure. And so I think there's a third piece to this, which is, while we're processing the guilt or the evaluation, the reflection, the understanding of our own mortality, it's a scary time. Not only is it sad and life changing and a game changer for all of us, but it's also a scary time because anytime you lose someone or something you love, it's scary because you can't imagine what is my life going to be like without this person. If you have a surviving parent, what is my mother's life going to be without my father? What is my father's life going to be like without my mother? How are my sisters going to do? How are my children going to do? All the people that loved this person who died are going to have their lives changed in one way or another. And you're going to be a witness to that. And so you start to wonder as you look at the bigger picture, okay, how is this all going to pan out? How is this all going to work? And how is this going to change our lives? So I think that's probably the third major thing that happens to us adults. And because usually as an adult, losing an adult parent, we have our responsibilities. We have to go to work, we have to pay the bills, we have to take care of our children, we have to be attentive to our spouses, we have to perform at our jobs. And it's a lot of pressure for us adults when we lose somebody because we have so many responsibilities and we can't always show up in life the way we normally do when we're grieving. So it can affect everybody in the family. It can affect your relationships, your friendships, it can affect your performance at work, all of these things. So the shift of taking one person that you loved out of your life, out of the equation, has a trickle down effect to everybody around you and everyone around them and everyone who is connected. And life is never quite the same after that person is gone. You, if you have to now care for a parent who doesn't have, um, who is remaining, who is surviving, now you're going to have to step in and make sure your parents are taken care of or your in-laws, and a lot of changes occur even with just the death of one person, right? Because one death touches so many people. It's not, oh, it's just one death. It's one death that impacts so many people around them in such profound ways. And we don't know how that loss is going to affect us until it happens and until probably months or years later. Okay. So let's just let's just flow. Let's just recap so we're all on the same page here, okay? So for us adults who lose parents as adults, we have these different phases that we go through, right? So the first phase is guilt. And how was I? We evaluate ourselves. Was I a good daughter? Was I a bad daughter? Why didn't I do this more? Why didn't I do that more? Et cetera, et cetera. Number two, we reflect on our own mortality and we start thinking about ourselves and our own death. And do we want to make some changes or do something differently to make sure that we live out our lives the way that we really want to? And then, thirdly, I think we start thinking about the changes as a whole as a result of this loss and how is that all going to work out? How is life going to go on without this person that we love so much? And how will it affect me? What does it mean to my children, to my spouse, and how I can show up for those people when I am in such pain? And I don't think that it's fair to expect people to show up in the right way, or excuse me, scratch that, in the way we're used to them showing up when they're grieving and they're dealing with loss. It's just not going to happen. And if we can be surrounded by or actively surround ourselves by those who love and care about us during the time of loss, it's very, very soothing and very critical to the outcome of the grief process. If we're alone, grief is 10 times harder, maybe 100 times harder. I don't know, but it's a lot harder. So if you know of somebody who is grieving the loss of a parent, just because they're an adult, doesn't mean they know what to do, doesn't mean they know how to handle it, doesn't mean they don't need help. Reach out and be there. And a lot of times it's not even about saying anything. You don't have to say anything specific, but it's just about being there, going out to lunch when it's over. Because the worst time for me, I remember right when my mother died, I had so many things to be responsible for and so many things to do and so many things to organize. And it was just overwhelming. And because I was running around and trying to get all these things done and accomplished, I really didn't have time to sit down and grieve. And I was a full time therapist. I had all these clients counting on me. I had to make money. I had to pay the, I mean, there was just so much going on at the time. It happens away from home. So I wasn't in my home state and it was overwhelming. And the people who really showed up for me at that time are in my life to this day, obviously. And there's a lot of people who didn't show up for me and they are not in my life anymore. So I think something that happens when people die that we love, especially a parent, we tend to see what people are made of. We tend to see who shows up, who walks into that funeral home when it's uncomfortable to give you a hug. And to let you know that they're there. You know, who goes out of their way to call you or send you a bouquet of flowers or make you a dinner or something, any gesture, it doesn't matter what it is. I don't care if it's a note on a piece of paper or if it's a grand, you know, $500 flower bouquet. It doesn't matter. The point is the thought. Who was thinking about you and who acted on that thought and showed up. And you will be very surprised who shows up and who doesn't. And I can tell you right now that when you lose a parent as an adult, there are many other adults who can't handle it, that will run away from you and will not want to talk about it and will not want to deal with it because of their own fears about death. And they will hurt you and they will disappoint you. And I don't mean to be negative, but it happens every time. But on the bright side, there will be people who will show up for you that you never imagined. And it will warm your hearts. And I think my aunt said this to me once, but she said, the people who show up are the right people. So, in other words, when you see who shows up for you in those dark times, they're the ones that you want around you forever. And so, in a way, it's a gift that these circumstances, as sad as they may be and as hurtful as they may be, separate the wheat from the chaff, right? You see who's the real, who are the real friends. And I could see just going through this time with my best friend and her family, and I know her family very well and all their friends pretty well. And I saw who was there and who wasn't, and that was interesting to see who really came and who didn't. And but I think all the right people came, and it was a beautiful gathering of people and meeting new people and getting to know people during the Shiva process that will last in their hearts forever. And there's no doubt in my mind. And so remember that if people disappoint you, and they will, when you're losing a parent or when you've lost a parent or after you've lost a parent, they will disappoint you. Remember that there will be other people that will come in to really warm your heart and surprise you, and you'll hold on to those people. And maybe you'll build new relationships, more closer relationships with them, and kind of say goodbye to some of the old ones. Because if people can't be there for you in your darkest moments, why do you need them? Why do you need them? To me, they're dead weight and fluff and not necessary, because that's really what true relationships are about. The good and the bad, not just a good time Charlie who's around for the party, but a real friend who comes around when it's not fun because they love you, who's willing to make a little sacrifice or get a little uncomfortable by making that phone call or sending that text or that card or those flowers or showing up at the funeral home or whatever it is that your culture does. And remember that it's a gift, not a curse, because I spent so many months so angry and so bitter at the people who had disappointed me. And I look back and I think what a waste of time that was. I could have been so much more, just clear about, well, okay, these people didn't show up. That's their problem. It's not a reflection of me or my mother. It's a reflection of them. And that's okay because look who did come. Look who did come. But you might go through that period of anger, right? While you're going through everything else, all of the adjusting and the changing and the reflecting. It's a heavy, heavy time. And I think one of the hardest times, finishing my thought from before, is after the Shiva is over or the wake is over or whatever it is that you do, then everyone else goes back to life as normal. And you're the one left by yourself dealing with this loss. Because even though we hopefully grieve together as a community or as a family we still grieve alone to some degree. What do I mean by that? Well, the feelings that you feel about the loss, the emotions that you're going through, that you're experiencing, are inside you, inside your mind and your heart. And no one else can really be in there with you. So a lot of times I get spouses of mourners, okay? And the spouses feel like they've lost their partners because their partners are depressed or they're overwhelmed or they're not paying attention or they're crying all the time and the spouse doesn't know what to do for their husband and wife, or they feel very neglected. So, as I said earlier, there's this trickle down effect from this one loss, even though we're adults, doesn't matter. And it trickles down to all of the different aspects of the family, the relationships, the business, the work, everything. And so, all of these changes that happen with the death of one person can cause a tremendous amount of sadness and anxiety and change for everybody. And it's always, always a good idea to seek some grief counseling for the family, for the person, for I think it's for the whole family, and definitely for the couple if there's a couple there, because everyone's affected and everyone's affected in different ways, but yet I'm very confident in the things that I'm saying, that these are sort of universal feelings that we all go through as adults losing a parent. Okay. Next thing. As we get older, okay, we're not going to lose one of our parents, but we're going to lose both of our parents. Many, many of us have already lost a parent, maybe when we were younger, maybe, when we were older, maybe it hasn't happened yet. And I know who wants to think about it or talk about it, but it's going to happen. So, for those of you watching who have lost both parents, and I am part of that category, I'm both my parents were deceased by the time I was 37, I believe. I think 36, 37. I can't remember exactly. And that is a huge game changer, which again could have its own show, and perhaps I will do that show. Um, but you will feel a little bit like an orphan, a little bit lost. And I remember saying to one of my friends at the time when my mother was dying, I said, "Oh my God, I'm going to be an orphan." And he looked at me and he said, "You're not an orphan. You're not going to be an orphan. You're an adult." And I said, "Well, no, but I'm going to be an orphan. I'm not going to have any parents." And that's really how I felt. And I was 37. I really felt like I was going to be an orphan because my mother was my anchor. And that surviving parent, when the other parent has already died or has passed away, really becomes mom and dad. Again, doesn't matter the age. Age is a number. It's an identifier of a developmental stage. It doesn't have a lot of meaning beyond that, right? Because it depends on the closeness and the quality of the relationship, not the age of the people. That's irrelevant, really. I mean, it's relevant maybe for treatment purposes, but it's not, it's just an identifier of a developmental stage that we understand as a culture, but it's not necessarily meaningful beyond that. So if you've lost both your parents, like I was really thinking, oh my God, who do I have? I'm all alone. I don't have my parents anymore. And when my friend looked at me and he said, "You're not an orphan," he was right. I'm not an orphan because it wasn't like, I was 6 years old and I had nowhere to live and, no one to care for me. And I was an adult and independently living on my own for, many years and had a career and a life and, you know, but I felt the feelings, not the reality, because feelings are not always representative of reality. We know that. But it felt as though I was going to be an orphan. It felt like I was lost. It felt like I was floating in outer space. And I wasn't used to that because I had my mother to anchor me as my root. She stayed in our family home. I always had that as a base for where home is. Now that was gone. My mother was my best friend. She was gone. And it was really terrifying. And I know that so many of you are feeling the same way and or are going to feel the same way or have already felt this way. And one thing that my friend said to me when I was having this conversation with him was, "Well, your significant relationships will become more significant." And I remember thinking, like, that's a really cold thing to say. It's not what I wanted to hear. It's very upsetting, but he was right. I don't know how he knew that, but he was right. And so what happened was I got even closer with my friends. I got even closer with my brothers. I got even closer with my aunt and uncle. I got closer with my cousins. And that was a very special gift that came out of feeling like an orphan. So, for any of you who are worried about that, I would say that is definitely what happens if you accept that, you know? Um, you have to accept that. You have to be willing to allow people to get close to you, and you have to be willing to embrace that at some point. But you do grieve alone in some ways, but you can surround yourself with people as you feel alone. People, we can't expect people to know exactly what we're feeling or thinking. I don't think that's fair. We can tell them what we're feeling and thinking. We can share with them. We can talk about it. We can go to therapy, which I highly recommend for anyone who lost a parent, even if it's once or twice, just to check in and process a little bit. But it's good to allow people to come in and be there for you and to help. And I think there was a prayer that was being read uh, Shiva. During Shiva, we do like a service every night for the deceased. And one of the prayers said, no matter how dark this time is, no matter how dark death can be for those of us left behind, death cannot erase memories and death cannot erase the love that we feel. And I thought that was a really beautiful couple of lines in this prayer that that's true. That when we have to be careful not to allow our grief to overwhelm us so that we forget, the gift of the relationship, the beauty of our relationship with that parent. And, and that doesn't mean that every memory of your parents is going to be beautiful because it's not. I mean, let's be real. We fight with our parents. We may have falling outs and then you make up and whatever. Um, but death itself does not take all of that away. In fact, it really highlights it and really focuses on that relationship and that love because there's so much reflection going on at the time. So, very important to remember all of these things as we're going through this process, and that all of the things that we're feeling are normal, are very normal. Okay. So, let's let's finish our last 15 minutes with the grief process and what that might look like for us adults losing a parent. And it's going to look different for us than it will a child. Okay, because we still have to go on. We have responsibilities. We have to be there for the surviving people, another parent, our children, our husband, our wife, whomever, whatever, our best friends, whatever it is. What's the grieving process going to look like? Well, in my opinion, from my experiences and from what I've seen in my clients, it's a very long process that ebbs and flows over, over the years. And the first year is the most daunting because you'll have a lot of the first, birthdays without them, holidays without them, anniversaries without them, the things that you did together with your parent, you're not going to be doing anymore. And so you're going to really feel that sense of loss in the beginning. You're going to pick up the phone to call them and you can't. I mean, that still happens to me from time to time. Something will happen, like, oh, I want to call my mom, and I can't call her, right? I can talk to her though, but I can't call her. So you're going to go through a lot of that. It's going to be painful, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. And I think you need to be prepared for that. And I think it's good to cut back on some of your responsibilities if possible during that first year. Now, that's not always possible for everyone, especially if you have young children. And some people enjoy jumping right back into life and jumping right back to work and jumping right into it and going right back to the way it was, and sort of avoiding it, avoiding the loss and the pain. But even if you do that, you're still going to feel different. You're going to feel tired. You're going to be forgetful. You're going to have a lot of different emotions coming out of you that you're not expecting. You're going to be angry one minute, you're going to be really sappy the next minute, you're going to be a little bit all over the place, you're going to not be able to handle the typical amount of work that you do before they died. I mean, you'll be able to do it, but you're not going to do it as well. And you have to be very patient with yourself because that's what grief does to us. Grief will take you to your knees. It will knock you right off your seat. And I think that the more you love somebody, the deeper the feelings of pain and loss can be. And, you know, you listen to with self help and, I'm happy because they're in a better place or whatever lines and stuff you use to get through the day. And it's all well meaning and it's all good. It is not realistic. And you have to be patient with yourself and allow yourself to be sad and miserable. Because if you don't, it's going to get you some other way. You're going to turn to drugs and alcohol. You're going to, you know, there's a million things not good that could happen. So you might as well face it to the best of your ability when it happens and allow yourself the time and the space to be miserable and to cry and to not want to get out of bed and to go through the pictures and that is just part of the grieving process. Are you going to be like that every moment? No, you're not. But you'll be like that a lot of moments. And it will come and it will go. And grief comes in and it comes out like the ocean. It comes in and it comes out. There's times where you just feel it really heavily. And there's times where it doesn't, really come to your mind. You could be driving in the car having a perfectly good day, and then a song comes on the radio, and bam, you're right back there. And so expect that. Expect stormy waters for the first year in the intensity. After the first year passes, it's going to hit you in a different way. It's going to become more real. The first year, it's not even real. You're like in some fog, some kind of dreamy fog, and you're not really connected to life the way you were before they died. And you're going to be kind of foggy. And the second year, it'll really whoa, it's been a year. Oh my God, my mom's really gone. My dad's really gone. My aunt, whoever, it's just, it hits you like a ton of bricks. Bam. And, and then you keep going and it goes on and on and on and on. And I've had people come into me 5 and 6 years after their parent died, just absolutely sobbing and hysterical, still grieving, still dealing. And I don't want to scare anyone and tell you, oh, this is how it's going to be forever, because it won't be. It gets less intense as time goes on. But the first 5 years, I would say 5 years after a death, 5 years after a divorce, to really feel like you're back on the horse and you're riding again. That doesn't mean you're going to have 5 miserable years, not at all. But that loss will still have a presence in your life for about 5 years. And, after 5 years, you start to get some sort of normalcy or peace with it. I can't explain it. I can't explain it. I just know it. I just know the process. And and again, the time frames I'm giving are general. It might be shorter for some people, longer for others. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. My male friends, when their parent died, they like went to the office immediately and continued to work. That's what men do. That's what they do. Women, we do things differently. We want to make sure our kids are okay and that our friends are okay and that our brothers and sisters are okay and that we're taking care of things. We're organizing things. We're dealing with it in a different way than men do in general. Again, there's no exact formula or rule for everybody and everything, but just giving you a synopsis. So be prepared for, a little, I guess, a little bit of an unsettled year or two. And I really encourage you to seek help with someone who really knows how to handle grieving individuals. There are people who specialize in it, and I would recommend looking for someone who specializes in grief, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. It just has to be someone that you feel comfortable with and that you feel like you can process the way that you feel with this person and that they are hearing you and giving you some good feedback and some good tools to cope with the time that you're dealing with. Okay. So Before we end, let's go back and kind of recap the stages of loss of a parent for adults, which again is very unique and different in its own right. Okay. So the first kind of thing we're going to, and this is in no particular order, by the way, but first piece that we discussed was the feelings of guilt and the self evaluation as a child of this parent who died. How was I? Did I do enough? I didn't do enough. I feel terrible. I should have never, you know, wrecked the car when I was 13 and, or excuse me, when I was 16 and I shouldn't have got caught smoking pot in high school. And oh my God, what I put my parent through. So you're going to go through all of that. I didn't spend enough time. I should have. And again, especially if you're a parent, you'll understand that's not what your parent cares about who died. And that's not what they were thinking. They were thinking the opposite. They were thinking about you. How is my child, my adult child, my grandchildren, my son in law, my daughter in law, how are they going to survive without me? So you can take that guilt and throw it out the door. Feel it, experience it, and then get rid of it because it's a wasted emotion, really. Then the other phase is facing your own mortality and your own aging process. So when that parent dies, there's still shock and awe, even if you knew that they were sick. And you're going to start reflecting on your own mortality, reflecting on your own life. Am I who I want to be? Am I where I want to be? How do I want to be better as a result of this loss? What did I learn from this loss? What can I, extract as lessons from this loss? Okay. And then we're going to have that time where we're going to feel very overwhelmed because as adults, we are expected to keep going, to go to work and take care of the children and be a good support system to our spouses and all of that pressure that children don't have that we have as adults when we're experiencing loss. Just because our parent died doesn't mean that our boss cares or that our children aren't going to need caretaking and the bills don't need paid. So there's a lot of pressure and a lot of overwhelming feelings that go on. And I really do recommend if you can cut back on some of those responsibilities when you're grieving, that would be a big help. And to make sure that you surround yourself with the people that you love and the people who showed up and cared for you during that process, and that you honor those friends and family because those will become the most significant relationships that you have. And they'll never replace the parent, but they will ease your pain a bit. And to remember that when you grieve, although you grieve as a community and a family, you still grieve alone. And that what you're going through is your own unique process. And there isn't a right or wrong, and there isn't an end point, and there isn't a starting point. It's an experience. It's an emotional experience. It's a learning experience. It's a life-changing experience. It's a game changer. And you then have to try to figure out, how can I continue to make my parents proud, continue to honor my parents, which is a big part of Judaism, and I don't know, but I'm assuming it's a part of all religion, that we have to continue to make our parents proud, and we keep them alive by honoring them, and we honor them by carrying out the lessons that they taught us, by being the best children that we can be, by being the best people we can be to other people. Or, perhaps your parent who passed away has, something that they were really into, like family dinners every Sunday night. Well, you may not want to have those dinners without your parent there, but then on the other hand, that's what they want. They wanted to teach you the importance of keeping family together. So you may have to figure out maybe a different way of doing it that's not so traumatic for you to go through without them, but that you're doing something. So we can keep those parents alive in so many beautiful ways. And again, these are all things that you can really explore with a good grief therapist or any therapist that you feel comfortable sharing your feelings and your pain with. And if it's not a therapist, I always say that's okay. Maybe a best friend, maybe your spouse, whoever, whatever works for you is perfectly fine. And know too that the experience may shine some light on certain people in not such a great way that you expected to show up for you but didn't. And then we'll shine a light on some really amazing people that you didn't expect to show up that will. And to try not to expend too much energy and anger over the people who didn't show up. Although I can tell you from experience, I did wrestle with that for quite some time because I felt like I had to defend my mother's honor. And it wasn't so much about me, but it was my mom. How could you not show up in her honor? Or how could you not call in her honor? And I was so angry about it. But then I realized that that's wasted energy and that most of those people either don't care, so they're really not worth having in my life. So thank you for the situation that weeded them out, or their own fears of all the things we're talking about today, losing their own parent, dealing with their own mortality, et cetera, are too overwhelming for them. And they are unable to extend themselves in that time. And, that's a reflection of them, not us. And that's okay. That's the road that they're on. And we have to accept that and focus on the people who are there because that can be meaningful and that can continue to develop in a great way and be very helpful to you in your process of grief as opposed to focusing on the people who hurt you. Easier said than done, I know. So that's going to wrap up Liz Live for today. I know it's sort of an uncomfortable subject, but death is, one of the most uh well, it might be the only thing that is guaranteed to happen to all of us and to everyone that we love. And as dark as that can seem or feel, we must remember that it's part of life. And one way or the other, we're going to have to learn how to embrace that. And don't ever be shy to reach out for help or share this. So, as I wrap up, guys, please like, share, and subscribe to this video. It's going to be up here on YouTube on my channel. I'm going to, of course, pass the link around on all of my social media outlets, but really important to please subscribe to my channel so that you can be notified of all of my Liz Lives. We're making a bit of a shift from Facebook over to um, YouTube. So help me out, guys. And I thank you so much for your support. And if you need to reach me, if you like a session or a consult on how to deal with something challenging or the loss of a parent, I'm here for you. I know exactly what it feels like, and I'm happy to hold your hand and walk with you through the storm of grief. On that note, let's try to be happy and be thankful for what we do have. And I will see everybody back here live, as always, on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Thank you for watching Liz Live. I'm Liz Statlander, and I'll see you next time.